All right, let's get right into it. We're about to unpack a pretty wild story you've probably never heard. It's about how something as simple as, well, trash became a major flashpoint in a trade war between the US and Canada. And, believe it or not, how all that pressure accidentally kicked off a green tech revolution. Everything starts with this number. 3.46 million tons. That is the absolutely staggering amount of garbage, municipal solid waste, that the province of Ontario trucks across the border into Michigan every single year. It's literally a river of refuse, and it's been flowing for decades. So, you've got to be asking, why? Why would they do that? Well, the answer is just simple. Bottom line economics. Michigan's fee for dumping in a landfill has been incredibly low. We're talking just 36 cents a ton. For years, it's actually been cheaper for businesses in Ontario to haul their trash to a whole other country than to just deal with it at home. But as you can see, that is about to change big time. And this quote from Waste Policy Advisor Peter Hargreave really hits the nail on the head. See, this isn't just about saving a buck for Ontario. The province is staring down a serious crisis. They are flat out running out of space in their own landfills. So exporting trash wasn't just cheaper, it became a necessity. And that created this huge dependency on their American neighbor. So how much does this really matter to Michigan? Well, it's not just a drop in the bucket. Canadian waste makes up over 14% of all the trash that gets dumped in Michigan's landfills. That kind of systemic reliance, well, that's a vulnerability. And it's a vulnerability that was about to be exploited. Okay, so here's where we zoom out from logistics and into geopolitics. This is the moment where garbage stops being garbage and becomes a weapon. During the pretty intense trade conflict back in 2025 and 2026, American negotiators looked at the situation and saw what the source material calls low-hanging fruit. All of a sudden, Ontario's trash problem wasn't about the environment or a landfill space anymore. Nope, it was a pressure point, a bargaining chip in a much, much bigger economic fight. And things escalated fast. I mean, look at this timeline. It's like legal whiplash. First, the administration uses these emergency powers, called EPA, to slap on tariffs. The Supreme Court strikes that down on February 20th. But did they stop? No way. Just 4 days later, they pivoted to a whole different law, Section 122, and hit him with a 10% global surcharge. The pressure was relentless. It was a total legal chess match, right? They moved from the unlimited power of IEPA, which got thrown out, to the more limited but still very powerful Section 122. The justification changed, but the result? The economic pain for Canadian exporters, including those hauling the trash, was very, very real. And all of this is happening with this huge ticking clock in the background. See, there's a mandatory review of the big North American trade deal, the USMCA, scheduled for July 1st, 2026. This isn't just some boring meeting. It's the moment where the entire trade relationship is put on the table. And in that kind of negotiation, every piece of leverage, even garbage, matters. But you know what? Here's where the story takes this amazing turn. All of that intense external pressure forced a huge wave of internal innovation. It forced Ontario to create what's called a circular bioeconomy. With that old, cheap, dump-and-forget model just completely falling apart under tariffs and political risk, Ontario really had no choice. They were backed into a corner. They had to build a new system from the ground up, one that could handle its own waste inside its own borders. And at the very heart of this new strategy is a pretty cool technology called pyrolysis. Now, instead of burning waste, which, releases all that carbon, pyrolysis heats organic stuff up to really high temperatures, but with no oxygen. It basically bakes the waste, and in doing so, it locks the carbon into a solid, stable form instead of letting it escape into the atmosphere. So it all starts with this. This is unmerchantable wood waste. Scraps from construction sites, leftovers from forestry, basically stuff that used to be considered total garbage, destined to be trucked across the border and buried forever. And through pyrolysis, it becomes this, biocarbon, a clean, carbon-neutral replacement for coal used in heavy industry, like making steel. I mean, think about that. A liability, something that literally costs money to get rid of, is transformed into a high-value industrial asset. And what's amazing is that it's not just one product. This process creates multiple valuable revenue streams from that one pile of waste. You get renewable natural gas for clean energy. You get the solid biocarbon for industry. And you get these things called carbon removal certificates, which are basically sellable credits for taking carbon out of the cycle. It's a true economic engine, not just a waste disposal method.
So you've got the tech, which is awesome. But in a world with trade wars and new rules about tracking materials and environmental standards, how do you prove your new green product is the real deal? Well, that's where the final piece of this puzzle comes in. Let's talk about the 905 Wood Digital Refinery. In simple terms, it's a digital system, a workflow, that's designed to give you perfect, verifiable data about where your waste came from and what it is. This is absolutely critical for proving you meet all those strict trade and ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance rules. One of the sources calls this system a sentient bridge, and I just love that phrase. It perfectly captures what this thing does. It connects the messy, chaotic reality of collecting waste with the super strict, high-purity demands of the modern biocarbon market. It's the translator between two different worlds. So how does it actually work? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Step 1, you capture all the data right there in the field. Step 2, you generate an immutable report, meaning it can't be changed or faked. In step 3, the big one, you use that rock-solid documentation to completely wipe out the risk of failing a border audit or a compliance check. It's all about de-risking this whole new green economy. So let's just step back for a second and look at the whole picture. What we've seen here is a truly incredible journey, a story of how a geopolitical crisis turned into a potential blueprint for a sustainable future. And remember the stakes here. This wasn't some theoretical problem. The data was crystal clear. If that border closed to trash exports, Ontario's own landfills would be completely full by 2034. That's not just a statistic. That's a real cliff they were about to drive off of. And this chart, man, this is the payoff right here. It shows the two paths. On one side, you have a hard deadline, a countdown to depletion in 2034. On the other side, by embracing this new circular economy, the lifespan of their existing landfills gets extended indefinitely. It's a total game changer, from just managing a crisis to actually creating a permanent solution. So it makes you wonder, right? I mean, nobody would ever choose to start a trade war. But this whole story forces us to ask a really fascinating question. Can the friction of geopolitics, the pressure of tariffs, and the threat of a closed border, can it all accidentally force us to innovate our way into a cleaner, more resilient, and ultimately a more sustainable future? Definitely something to think about.